This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
Welcome back, everyone. You may have heard this term before. Maybe you're not 100% sure what this term means, but it's pretty much everything, in my opinion, of moving your life forward and leaving things behind, maybe things that are holding you back. We are referring to shadow work. I'm going to dig into that today, learn a lot about this. I've been studying it for the last bunch of years, and there's a lot of takeaways there. That's all I'm going to say. And I'm far from the expert, very far, but I have the expert here today. She offers amazing counseling services for us to have those transformations, especially when it comes to doing shadow work. Barbara Lanz is back with us. How are you doing today?
Hey, good afternoon, Steve. I'm well. How are you doing?
Really good, really good. I'm glad we're talking about this. I think there's a lot of misconceptions as to what shadow is and how to define it. So let's go to the basics. What exactly are we talking about here?
Our shadow parts are those parts that we disown. We don't want anyone to know about. They form through life. A lot of times people, when you talk about going on in life, they don't want to work with the past because it's over. It happened. Well, it could have been in childhood, as a teenager, as an adult. Something happened and a coping skill developed as a way to deal with that particular situation. And maybe it's the situation that we don't want to talk about. Maybe it was abuse and we don't want to talk about it because it's over. It's not happening anymore. Maybe a coping skill to work with what happened in life is addiction. We don't want to talk about that because I left that behind. There are many people that do walk away from addictive and abusive substances and relationships, and then they just want to start over. The problem is that energy lives in our body, and it takes energy to keep that suppressed. So the shadow, it doesn't need to control our lives, but it does need to be acknowledged and given a voice. And once recognized, then it tends to go away. When we take the jewels, take the gift from it, then it's easier to go on.
I find it very interesting that we're often said or told to live in the moment. Live in the moment. That was a game changer for me. It really was. Living in the moment, enjoying now. That's where the beauty is. You don't have any issues. But in a way, you're not really living in the moment doing shadow work because you are going back. What are your thoughts on that? I'm really curious.
Well, living in the moment is the goal. And there are people that can do that. If you have the ability to process whatever has happened, and you are in a family or social system where you are seen and heard and you can go on, then amazing. But if you can go on, you don't usually end up in my office. If you end up in my office, it's because you can't figure out how to go on, because you have anxiety, you have depression, you have addiction, you've got some coping things that are not working so well for you. A big shadow piece in this country is addiction. And, I've certainly had my run with it. And that's one of the benefits of going to 12-step meetings, AA, NA, is that you can come out of the shadow. You can talk about what's going on. Some people stay a long time. Some people don't. They go for a short time and they come to terms with what happened, and then they can go on.
Is the majority of the things that reside in the shadow from our childhood?
I think it can start there. I think if what you learn is that you have to be good to get approval, you can't be needy, you can't be angry, you can't be weak, you can't really even be too powerful or too good, because you might upset the balance in the family system. And so if you learn to carry a role as a way to survive, then what you know is how to be in this role, a role player. And you might not even know really who you are on the inside. Dr. Gabor Mate has a lot of teachings on that, on the child and the role that they learn to play. and how that influences your ability to be in a relationship as an adult, because you're still playing a role. Um, the guy comes in and he's trying to be the good husband, and the wife says, well, you didn't do this, this, and this, and he looks around and says, well, I didn't know I was supposed to, because that isn't what he learned, was to do what he was told.
We just open up a whole new territory here.
Yeah.
And it's my belief that after a journey, that the 5 love languages is something that every couple, whether they're dating or anything, they should hit that up at the very beginning of their relationship to find out where they are. To your point, you could have a man who takes care of the yard, paints, mows, does all of this, maybe does wonderful things and says, yeah, well, here it is. I did it for you guys. And the wife or partner may say, oh, that's great. Yeah. And he's looking for words of affirmation. Meanwhile, she's looking for quality time or something else. But to your point here, he may be doing that because that's part of his shadow. He thinks that acts of service is where it's at. That's what other people want. Let me do this to show. That's how I show that I love and care about you. But where's it coming from? He's piloting from something from the past.
Oh, the love languages are certainly a good way for couples to communicate about what they need. And it's really important to know that it isn't, however, the end of the story when it comes to communication.
Sure.
So that it could be a role that, we learn our roles at home and we learn our roles. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's part of the shadow. The shadow piece would be the part of you that you don't want anyone to know about. That's more of the definition of the shadow. Okay. But not being able to see what goes on, in a family system or in a home, that can lead to communication difficulties. That languages really helps with that.
Yeah, I wasn't referring that as the end all. That's just the starting point, because you can do the quiz online. It takes you 20 minutes, if that. When we talk about roles that others play, is that the parts? Like, I understand that we have different parts of our personality, and that's not to say that we're talking about multiple personalities. That's something totally different, but different parts of our personality where we may interact with a friend and you play a certain role. That's not the same role you would play if you were interacting with your kids. You wouldn't speak the same. You would act differently. Same thing with your partner, spouse, whatever. Is that role the same thing as parts?
Similar in some ways. We often show up to the degree that we're expected to show up. And if you're carrying a lot of shame, or if you're carrying a lot of fear of being vulnerable, you're going to stay busy a lot. You're not going to be able to play. It's really hard to play when you're covering up a shadow life. And the thing about shadow is it tends to go away once you shine some light on it. So the more powerful the items are that you're hiding, the harder it is to go on in life. If you had sexual abuse as a child and you've never told a soul in your life, and you are one of those people that can't stop, you can't stop working 80 hours a week or running miles and miles a day or getting into this project or getting into that project, you can't stop, then that's a piece of shadow that you're spending a lot of energy hiding.
Can you give some examples of what might be in somebody's shadow, what's sitting there, things that they don't want to confront?
Well, sometimes it's it's not, it's just the way life was. But if you're discounted as a child and you're not allowed to have any feelings, in other words, if parents control children by controlling how they feel, if they act up or if they're angry, go to your room until you can calm down. That's just the way life was. And it doesn't necessarily mean that anything bad happened, but they didn't get acknowledged and they didn't get seen and they didn't get heard.
Well, okay. I'm glad you just said what I was thinking. How many times, growing up, have we heard children are to be seen and not heard? Right away, that just squelches down, a child expressing emotion and other things, right?
Well, and I suspect that as long as that's been around, it was a way for parents who had a lot of children back in the day where, my mom was one of 10, my dad one of seven back in the day, 100 years ago now, where parents couldn't tend to 10 children and survive the depression. They couldn't. And so it was a necessary survival mechanism, I think, in that time and day. But anyway, it keeps going. But that's the absolute worst thing that you can do, is to not listen to your children.
Oof. Can't imagine. But sometimes, not to throw any parents under the bus, they're busy, they got things going on. Maybe sometimes they don't realize the importance at that moment that the child is trying to get their attention. It might just seem, they just want candy, or they want to watch something on TV or whatever. Yeah, I'll get to you in a second. I'm in the middle of doing something right now. When these things are in our shadow that need to get worked on, could it be a one-off situation? Could it be even, that one situation where the parent said, hold on, I'll be there in a minute, I'll get to you. Maybe they never do. Could that impact somebody?
Probably, if it's just a rare occasion, not so much. But a big part of the shadow is projection. A lot of times the shadow can be unconscious. We don't even know we're carrying shadow. Everybody has a shadow part, but it's not talked about. And so most people don't realize. So what it does is it comes across as projection, which means that we see in others what is going on with us. So the book that talks a lot about this, the dark side of the light chasers, is Debbie Ford's book, because she talks about how even in one of her presentations, she had somebody that was really, really angry when she would get up and make angry comments, about her. But anyway, often what we do is we project onto others what is a shadow piece in us. So when you get triggered, so I have trouble with angry people, particularly angry men. I don't do well with angry men. I just want to shut down, go away, hide, leave me alone, kind of a thing. I ended up in my internship doing my internship in Batter's intervention program. So interesting how that brought me full circle into working with angry men. My dad wasn't an angry person. I would never have characterized him. He was the most kind, gentle, Sabbath school teaching, doctor you could find. But he had a rage at home that nobody knew about. And that's not to say that's just the way it was. That was many, many years ago now. But the part of that is that often you project what your shadow is. And so in my shadow, there was abuse. There was, but it was not seen as abuse. It was just the way parents parented at the time. But for me, it impacted me greatly. And so we can have things happen to us that are very normal in society. Then they become part of our shadow, but we often project it. And then we accuse somebody of being angry that's not really angry. It's, in other words, it's out of context. It can be taken completely out of context.
As you're speaking, is bringing back memories, because I can relate here in a relationship I had many, many, many years ago. But she had an abusive father. And as I look at it, she always tried to get a rise out of me or push my button. And I'm chill. This is me. This is it. We got an issue. We're working. We'll figure it out. It'll be all good. But she would always try to push. And I think, I love your feedback on this as I look back at it. I feel that she was doing that because that was her comfortable spot. Maybe that was the shadow. So as tumultuous as it could be to try and start a conflict, that's what she knew. That's how she was raised. And I feel that she was trying to do that for me, but that would make it feel more comfortable. Like I'm home again. Is that part of the shadow too?
Can be. I mean, she was probably completely unconscious. She probably didn't even know what she was doing. But we tend to return to what is comfortable, what we learned growing up, what our comfort zone is. You know, the nerves that fire together or wired together, that's research from, I think, in the late 40s, very old research that, you know, if the person that loves you harms you, those two wires are connected, which I think we've touched on before. The reason abuse tends to go on in family systems is because that's what that person is adjusted to. That's what they're used to.
I got another download. There was a big song that came out years ago. The Pretenders redid the song. It wasn't a big hit. It was back in the day. There's a thin line between love and hate. That was the name of the song. That was the message. Kind of sounds what you were just saying there, where it's, you know, they're very close, you know, as we pilot through life. Um, I've heard that when you look at somebody, or if you're just thinking about it, and there's things you don't like in them, you know, you look at, look at this person, you know, what a jerk. This person does this person does that. You're thinking it, or even saying it to another friend. You just, you know, look at Jim over there. He's like such a blah, 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 blah. Is that the shadow coming up for you, and that's why you're projecting it to another?
Could be. If you have somebody that you really, you are just finding all kind of fault with them, but in reality, they're stable and they've got a great income and they've got a great job and they've got their kids are great. Everything's great. But when you see them, you feel what a loser that person is. You know, take their accomplishments in their life on one side of the page and put yours on the other side of the page and then see what that's about. Because it could be that you're projecting your own stuff onto somebody else.
Right. There's got to be a reason why you see fault or something negative in them. It's, you know, why would you do that in the first place?
Well, it's an attempt to heal your own life.
That's a great point.
Yeah, it's an unconscious attempt to come to healing, which I believe drives all of us.
Wow. Part of what you offer is IFS. Can we talk about that in relation to the shadow?
Sure. Internal family systems, it recognizes the parts of us. We have parts that, the exiled parts, those parts that are wounded, that we suppress. And we have a protective system that keeps them at bay. In other words, a protection can be great at a job. It can be the best parent in the world. It can drive you to be the best. But it also keeps you really, really busy so that you don't have time or energy to deal with, you know, any projections that come up. That's just your life. And so you have protective parts, but you also have a part, firefighters that are addiction, self-harm, things that, you know, cutting. Those are also protective parts because they keep you from feeling the pain underneath the addiction. They keep you from feeling, you know, physical pain. People that cut, sometimes that physical pain feels better than the emotional pain. And at least you can direct your attention to it. So IFS looks at the whole picture. It looks at, you know, what is driving you in your behaviors.
The cutting thing, unfortunately, bigger with teens. And, you know, some say also it's because they're so numb, they want to feel something.
It can be also.
Wow. How does IFS work?
Well, we do what's called parts mapping. When people start telling their story, I start looking for the part that says, you know, always try to be good, the good part. There's a part, you know, that I look for, and it's always making an excuse for someone or always justifying somebody, or the codependent part that's always keeping everybody happy. And that dance around everybody being happy, you know, that's a part that wants to make sure that everybody's good. So they learned that part somewhere. So we look at the protective systems, we look at the managers, firefighters, and then we have to work with those and get to know those. And then that helps us find what is called self energy. And the self energy is that part of who you are created to be, that you get to choose in life what you want. Sometimes we're on a path that we didn't really choose. We just found ourselves in the middle of what somebody decided for us. And so we look at that. Working with the exile parts, it takes time to trust that your protectors are going to let you see the exile parts. Because if you go into the exiled wounding parts too soon, then your addiction's going to kick back up, the pain's going to kick back up, the coping skills are going to kick back in, the obsessive cleaning at 2 a.m. is going to kick back in. You know, your rage is going to come back if you start working on those parts before you have a good relationship, and knowing how you handle stress, how you handle these parts.
When you say exile parts, can you give us a definition of that?
An exile part is that part you don't want to know. It's one of the shadow pieces. You don't want anybody to know about that part.
Okay.
It's something that you're ashamed of, or it could even be the opposite of something you're really good at. But if you're really good at it and somebody knows it, then they might want you to do something that might make you uncomfortable. And then you don't want to do that either. So it could be either.
All of those things that we're talking about, like the exile part, are we aware of it?
Sometimes. Look at your triggers. What makes you, what gets, the way you know is when you get triggered. Who pisses you off, basically? Who makes you angry? Where do you find fear? You know, when you see something and you overreact, you react bigger than the event, then that's coming to your home. That's coming home to you.
How does the shadow show up in our everyday life?
Well, it depends whether you're aware of it or not. It comes up in relationships. We were talking about dating a couple weeks ago, but what's the reaction that you have when someone's too aggressive or pursuing you too much? In other words, you go out on a date or two and this person just calls you and calls you and calls you, and you've decided you don't want to go out with them anymore. That pursuing part, and then you find yourself withdrawing. Okay, how have you not learned to have good boundaries in a relationship? Somewhere along the way, you have not figured that out. And so all of a sudden you find yourself, oh, how did I get here again? Or you meet somebody that you really like and you run. You don't want to see them again, because that opens up like, oh, what are they going to do to me? Because I don't trust, because something happened in the past. And so now you don't trust. And so now you don't want to deal with it. And so you just, not going down that road today. Say withdraw from life.
I know somebody who is that person. Not anybody that I'm pursuing, just a friend. But just what you're saying, and they'll even say, I'm not really sure what I want anyway. But what they're really saying is, I'm not ready. I'm afraid to get hurt. I was burned already. They're pushing back, even though they may be on dating sites. They might be at a bar, restaurant, whatever, and look across and see somebody over there and want to talk to them. But when it looks like that could, maybe they can make a connection with somebody, then the walls go up and push it away. Don't want to deal with it. Exactly what you said. It's almost uncanny.
Yeah,
wow.
That's kind of a common theme.
Yeah, it's conflicting too, because even in that situation, I think it also applies to other situations where you want something so bad, but you don't, or you're afraid of it. So you're there, but you're not. Therein lies time for counseling. How do we connect with you, Barbara? What's the best way?
You can connect with me from my website, barbarajlanz.com, and send me a message through there. I'm also in a few other places. Look around for me. I'm around, but yeah, I'll be glad. I have on quite a few insurance policies for Tennessee and Florida. So if you have insurance, that works. And then I also have some groups in Tennessee and Johnson City.
Beautiful. Thank you for giving us the insight on this today. It's so important. It's fundamental to moving your life forward, and also for your transparency in your journey and how this applies to you, because I feel everybody's got a story. We learn from other stories. So I appreciate that. Thanks for being here. We'll catch up soon.
All right. Thank you.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.